Well, I'm going over here because I can't see over the lectern. I'm Pat Cohen, everybody. I am on the board, and I'm also a membership chairman, and I want to welcome everybody. Shabbat Shalom, and Rabbi will tell you how our service runs. We have a few new people here, and especially welcome you, and just reach out to me if you have any questions, and enjoy the service.
Thank you, Pat. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Oh, wait, one other thing. Sorry, leave it to me. Just make sure your cell phones are silenced. Thank you.
Thank you. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. It's good to see everybody. Pat said I will explain our service to you for those of you who are new. Our service is going to be, everything that we're going to be doing together is on the screen in front of you. We have all of the prayers, everything on our slideshow. We also have prayer books in the pews if you would prefer, and there are page numbers on the slides, and I'll also be announcing page numbers as we go through the service. But if you're following along on the screen, you'll have everything that you need, and our custom at Temple of Israel is to join together and everything that we do, reading or singing, Hebrew or English, hopefully everyone will be comfortable joining in, and you should feel free to join in whenever you're comfortable. So I also want to say for our service cues, as I invite people to rise and be seated, I'm inviting you to rise either in body or in spirit as you're comfortable. I wasn't here last Shabbat, so I want to first thank Tam for helping me lead services while I was gone. I was at the Union for Reform Judaism's Camp Coleman, which is in Cleveland, Georgia, and it was my first time there to spend 10 days, and it was awesome. And I have more that this kind of inspired and prompted me to think about that I'll share later in the service. But I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to be with you on this Shabbat, and I hope that y'all sing as loudly as the campers did. Because that was awesome. But to be fair, there were 400 of them. We are going to continue begin our service on page 126. I begin with a prayer of gratitude for all that is holy in my life. God needs no words, no English or Hebrew, no semantics and no services, but I need them. Through prayer, I can sense my inner strength, my inner purpose, my inner joy, my capacity to love. As I reach upward in prayer, I sense these qualities in my Creator. To love God is to love each other, to work to make our lives better. To love God is to love the world God created and to help work to perfect it. To love God is to love dreams of peace and joy that illumine all of us and to bring that vision to life. We'll continue singing Hine Matov from Psalm 133 on page 128. Hine Matov Umanayim Sheberachim Gam Yachad Continue on page 130, singing thanks to God for all of God's beautiful creation with the words L'chun Ranana from Psalm 95. some issues with Zoom sound. All right. We're going to continue on page 138 as we join in singing the poem Lecha Dodi. We'll join together if you're in our prayer books on page 138 on verses 1, 2, 5, and 9. And if you're on the screen, we'll join as it's written. As we sing the last verse, verse 9, Bo'i v'shalom, we'll rise and face the entryway to welcome Shabbat like a bride or a queen. Ya la 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 lecha dodi, ya la 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 likrat kala, ya la 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 b'nei Shabbat nekabela, shamor v'zachor. Try one more thing. This is never easy. Okay, because this is the same settings we always have. But let's see if this works now. We are going to continue with our songs of welcoming with Shalom Aleichem, welcoming the ministering angels, the angels of peace, who will hopefully bring us a sense of Shabbat rest and peace this evening. Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Asharetz, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Boachem Shalom. Kadosh Baruch Hu, Baruchuni l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shalom Aleichem. Kadosh Baruch Hu. We are going to turn in our prayer books to page 120, and Pat is going to lead us in the lighting of the Shabbat candles.
You have a prayer book.
Oh,
You want me to read the English?
no.
It's okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'hadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen. Thank you. We're going to continue on page 144 as we transition into our Shema and her blessings. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah Be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בגלה ובזמן קריב באמרו אמן יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עלמיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקדושה בריחו לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמא באמרו amen. We'll rise for our call to prayer on page 146. Please be seated. Continue on page 148. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Oreyom v'layla, kolel or mipnei choshech, kolel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Oreyom v'layla, kolel or mipnei choshech, kolel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or. Continue on the bottom of page 151. Wisdom and wonder, passion and instruction, story and symbol, all these things your Torah gives to us, and the more we devote ourselves to it, the more it grows and gives. What could be a truer token of your abiding love than this holiest of your works and the living language that gives it form? Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. We'll continue on page 152 and 153 with the Shema, and again I'll invite you to please rise. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Leolam Ba'ed. Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Leolam Ba'ed. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Please be seated. Continue on page 154. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol meodecha v'hayu hadevarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha Vishinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha u'v'lechtecha v'derech u'v'shochbecha u'v'kumecha u'kshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha u'chtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'hitem kedoshim le'elohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim Lihiot lachem le'Elohim ani Adonai Elohechem. We'll continue on the top of page 157. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together. Continue with our prayer for freedom and redemption, Micha Mocha, on page 158. Continue on page 160 with the words of Hashkivenu, asking God's sheltering presence to shelter us with peace this evening and every evening. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom V'hamideinu shomreinu l'chaim. Spread the shelter of your peace over us. Guide us in wisdom, compassion, and trust. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom V'hamideinu shomreinu l'chaim. Save us for the sake of your name. Shield us from hatred, sorrow, and pain. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom V'hamideinu shomreinu We'll continue on page 164, and we'll continue on even-numbered pages as we rise together for our tefillah. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Velohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol, V'zocher Chastei Avot V'imahot, Umevi Geula Livnei V'neihem, Leman Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham Ve'ezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechaye HaKol atah Rav Lehoshia, Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed, Mechaye HaKol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Verofech Olim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Micha Mocha Baal Gevurot, Umido Melach, Melech Memit Umechaye, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman atah l'hachayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechaye hakol. Please be seated. קראתיך וצאתי לקראתך, לקראתי מצאתיך. יאי לי לי לי, יאי לי לי לי, יאי לי לי, יאי לי 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 לי, יאי לי Where might I go to find you, O exalted and hidden one? Yet where would I not go to find you, ever-present, eternal one? My heart cries out to you, please draw near to me. The moment I reach out to you, I find you reaching in for me. Baruch atah Adonai ha'el ha'kadosh. And on the top of page 173, may these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. And on page 175, you are with us in our prayer, our love, and our doubt, in our longing to feel your presence and do your will. You are the still, clear voice within us. Therefore, O God, when doubt troubles us, when anxiety makes us tremble, when pain clouds the mind, we look inward for the answer to our prayers. There may we find you, and there find courage, insight, and endurance. And let our worship bring us closer to one another, that all Israel and all who seek you may find new strength for your service. Baruch atah Adonai, she'odcha levadcha b'yira na'avod. We'll continue on the top of page 177. God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth which day by day sustains us. For all these and more, we offer thanks. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ulecha na'el lehodot. We'll continue with our prayer for peace on page 178 as we sing together Shalom Rav. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki atahu melech Adon lechol hashalom. Ki atahu Shalom, Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. V'tov be'einecha levarech et Amcha Yisrael b'chol Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. we'll take a moment for our own quiet thoughts and prayers. Yehu leratson imrefi vegyon libi lefanecha Adonai tzuri Adonai tzuri begoali yehiu leratzon imrefi vegyon libi lefanecha Adonai tzuri Adonai tzuri begoali. We take a moment in our service to think of our loved ones, our family members, and our friends who are in need of a prayer of healing, as we're about to say Misha Berach, our prayer for healing. I'll invite those of you who are on Zoom, if you would like to share the name of someone who you're holding in your hearts at this time. I'll read them aloud in a moment. And as I look your way in the sanctuary, if there's someone you're thinking of and you'd like to share their names, please do.
Esther Greenville, Lauren Treechek, Rod Seibel, Danny Haynes, Henriette Ferretti, Laura Rose Smith, and Harriet Flavio. Julie Benson.
Melody Griffin and Charlie Gooperman. We'll join together on page 371 as we sing together Misha Berach, our prayer for healing. Misha Berach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing Mi sheberach imotenu mekor habracha le'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. So as I mentioned at the beginning of services, I spent the last, 10 days out of the last 2 weeks at Camp Coleman, which is in Cleveland, Georgia, in the mountains, in a really beautiful spot. And there were a few things that I was thinking about while I was there. The first is, it rained every day. I mean, not like every day as in like all day every day, but it rained at least 5 to 10 minutes every single day that I was there. But the first day that I was there were torrential downpour. And I mean like really like some of the worst rain I've ever been in, and I was driving in it, so it was pretty bad. It was so bad that the roads around camp, the ones that mostly are walked on by the campers and or driven on by golf carts, were completely washed away. Like they had to bring in gravel trucks and sand to fix the roads while I was there. It was kind of a mess. And this reminded me of something which I'll share with you in a minute. The second thing that I thought of mostly while I was there, I had the opportunity 3 different times while I was there to help different groups of kids prepare for services. So they have tefillah every day at camp, tefillah being the Hebrew word for prayer, and it looks differently every day, but each cabin is given an opportunity to lead once for the whole camp at various points throughout the summer, not just on Friday evenings. But I was also, because I was only there for one Shabbat, the rabbi in charge of leading services for that Shabbat. So I had 2 bunks that I was working with, the 12 and 13-year-olds, and then a bunk of 13 and 14-year-olds. So I guess because I said I was willing to work with any great age group, they gave me that one. But it was awesome. They were great kids. And so as I'm sitting on Friday night, and actually I was the stage director, directing all of the kids when to go up and when they're supposed to read their parts in between singing songs. 2 of our kids from this congregation happened to be the ones who chose to help with services that evening. Jeremy and Rebecca Baum were 2 of our service leaders that evening, and it was awesome. But as I'm sitting there, I'm thinking to myself, how great of a legacy the kids who are leading this service and the kids who are at camp have, because people thought in the 50s and 60s to put these camps in the middle of nowhere around the country. And now they're less in the middle of the nowhere because, we've developed things around them. But so the combination of these 2 things, of this torrential downpour and seeing our kids and thinking about the concept of legacy, kind of weaves perfectly in with this week's Torah portion, which is Parashat Pinchas. And most of the elements in this Torah portion relate to legacy. So I want to share some thoughts that I actually wrote a couple of years ago, because I think that they kind of touch on a lot of different things that I feel are still interesting. And also, even though I wrote most of these words, I think 8 years ago, reading them again makes me actually a little bit angry, and you'll see why. Several years ago, in an issue of Psychology Today, Dr. Michelle Wick published a short article entitled "Making Our Mark: Contemplating Our Legacy as it Relates to Climate Change Action." Accompanying the article was a 2-paneled cartoon. In the first panel, there's a man sitting in a chair looking at his baby child sleeping in a crib. A woman enters the room and asks the man what he's doing, and in the next panel, the man answers, never taking his eye off the child, reminding myself why I should do something about climate change, even though I won't live to see the benefits of my actions. It's a touching cartoon, and in many ways, it's the perfect setup for the article that follows, where Dr. Wick describes an experiment that she performed on a group of her students. She had read a recent controlled online experiment where a group of clinicians were testing the hypothesis that thinking about one's legacy would in some way lead one to actions related to combating climate change. Dr. Wick divided her green infrastructure class into two groups and decided to perform her own experiment. She asked the first half to respond to the following prompt. Think about the ways in which you would have a positive impact on future generations. The other half of the class were simply instructed to make a list of all of the things that they had on their to-do list for that day. And since this was toward the end of the semester, for many students it was a long list. After each student completed their task, she told everyone in the class that one person would be randomly selected to win a $3 prize, and that this person could choose to donate all or part of that money to a local land trust. She then asked her students to write down on their papers how much they would donate if they were the one to win that $3. After she tallied the responses, she found that those who wrote essays about their legacy would donate on average $2 of their winnings. And those who simply reflected on the daily tasks that they had to do offered an average of 84 cents. While the experiment was only loosely connected to the earlier, more controlled experiment, the results were almost identical. That is, it appears that there is some sort of direct link between those of us who are consciously thinking and are concerned with the legacy that we leave and caring for the planet as it relates to climate change. I bring all of this up for a couple of reasons. The first one being that the major theme of this week's Torah portion, Parshat Pinchas, is about legacy, about how our actions in our generation affect generations to come. And the second was, when I wrote this, I had just returned from serving as the rabbinic staff member on a trip to Costa Rica with a group of students from Texas. And the primary objective of the trip was to learn about how Costa Rica, which is a relatively poor country, had entirely devoted their resources and energy to creating a sustainable energy infrastructure to the point that when we were there, they had not used a single ounce of fossil fuels to fuel their entire country. In this week's Torah portion, something strange happens. There's an episode at the end of the portion that describes the death of Moses. This is strange because the entire book of Deuteronomy is dedicated to this final farewell speech, or the series of speeches that Moses, and yet here we are, not even at the end of this book, the book of Numbers, and we hear all about how Moses is going to die. And not only that, but when Moses actually dies at the end of Deuteronomy, it looks almost exactly the same as it does in this week's Torah portion. So the rabbis are forced to ask, why does this passage need to be here? And the answer that they come up with is to say that this Torah portion is actually meant not to be viewed as part of a chronology of what's happening in the wilderness, but that this Torah portion specifically is a collection of stories that all have to do with people and how their actions influence their legacy. We have the story of Pinchas in the beginning of the Torah portion. The Torah portion is named after him. Pinchas was a zealot who, after he kills two people who are openly defying what God has asked, receives a special covenant, a briti shalom, a covenant of peace, which may mean a whole bunch of different things. I'm not going to spend too much time reflecting on the meaning of the covenant in particular, but the rabbis suggest that this could be a covenant that was designed to temper his violent inclination, and he also was assigned the role of high priest after this event, where he and all of his direct descendants were going to be the ones who led Israel in the priestly system. We also have the assigning of plots, land plots, as the people of Israel are contemplating what it means to enter the land of Israel. All of the land is divided up, and each family is given a portion that's supposed to go and be passed down from generation to generation and never leave that family. Do you know the code? Oh, okay. Somebody set the alarm on us. Okay, good grief. And then, of course, we have the story of Zelophehad's daughters, which is a really interesting story. Zelophehad's daughters, in response to hearing the law of inheritance, the laws of inheritance say that only male heirs are the ones who are going to be able to inherit land from their fathers, and a man, Zelophehad, dies with only having 5 daughters, and these 5 daughters approach Moses. They plead their case and say, why should their father's line end just because he didn't have any sons? Moses takes their complaint to God, and God says, you're right. And the law is changed to allow for inheritance by daughters in the Torah's law. And then we have the story of Moses passing down his leadership position to Joshua. Moses pleads that his legacy should be handed to Joshua while he's still alive, so that the people of Israel should never be without a shepherd, is the specific phrase that he says. All of these ideas about legacy made me think of my trip to Costa Rica. Though we began our trip in San Jose, and on the very first day we heard a presentation about the effects of climate change on Costa Rica and about the importance of doing everything we can to combat carbon emissions for the sake of producing electricity. At the very end of the presentation, the man who was addressing our group casually mentions, oh, and by the way, Costa Rica for the past year has been 100% energy independent for fossil fuels for the production of a country's electricity. Then, over the next 8 days, we spent time working with the community and actually getting to see the pieces of the country's infrastructure that made this 100% energy independence possible. We visited 5 different power plants, spoke with 2 volcanologists as we learned about the production of geothermal energy. We visited an experimental solar farm, a private wind energy company, and finally a hydroelectric plant. Each facility we went to, the speakers were all proud to share with us that their country was not emitting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere when they were making their electricity. And it really made me think. And to be honest, it made me angry, and as I say this, and I said before, it still makes me angry. How is it possible that one of the poorest countries in the world, and Costa Rica is one of the poorest countries in the world, how are they able to achieve that kind of energy independence, while we in the United States, who claim to be investing in alternative energy sources, can't really get our act together? But it really wasn't that difficult to figure out why this issue was so important to Costa Ricans. While my group and I were there, we were constantly seeing on the news evidence of how climate change was directly affecting their country. On the Caribbean side of the country, there had just been a torrential downpour, kind of like I felt at Camp Coleman, and that side of the country was entirely underwater. In fact, we had a group of Italian exchange students who had come to study on the Caribbean side of Costa Rica who were not allowed to travel to their host homes because they were totally flooded. Meanwhile, in the town of Fortuna, where we stayed for the majority of our trip, and which was on the Pacific side of the country, where it was experiencing a massive drought, so bad that in a couple of cases when we were going to stop for a break while on the bus, we couldn't use the bathroom in those places because they didn't have access to running water and couldn't flush the toilets. The reservoirs were so empty that they had to open access to running water during only certain times of the day. So the idea that they as a society felt an urgent need to invest in that kind of energy infrastructure was paramount. The real question for us then, here in America, is at what point are we going to open our eyes to the real problem that our world is facing and recognize that our attempts at trying to make fossil fuels burn cleaner isn't the answer? At what point are we going to stop and really think about the legacy that we are leaving for our future generations? And maybe more people should take time out of their busy schedules to really consider how we can make a difference as individuals and as a country. And then hopefully we will, as the study I presented suggests, feel more willing to invest in our future and the future of our planet. Shabbat Shalom. We are going to continue our service with Aleinu as we rise together on page 586. Aleinu l'shabbat. שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. Please be seated. We'll continue on page 591. May we gain wisdom in our lives, overflowing like a river with understanding, loved each of us for the peace we bring to others. May our deeds exceed our speech, and may we never lift up our hand but to conquer fear and doubt and despair. Rise up like the sun, O God, over all humanity. Cause light to go forth over all the lands between the seas, and light up the universe with the joy of wholeness, of freedom, and of peace. V'nemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad ushemo echad. We devote the next few moments to hold in our hearts in loving memory those for whom the Shabbat and the previous week are a yahrzeit. We remember Jerome Hartman, Maddie Nevalainen, Sel Bader, Ernest J. Meyer Jr., Benjamin Smith, Libby Zelda Saltzman, Irving Abrams, Stanley Cook, and Leo Geisberg. And if there are those of you on Zoom who would like to add a name, someone you're holding in your hearts in memory at this time, please type their name into the chat and I'll read them aloud in a moment. And as I look your way in the sanctuary, if you'd like to share a name, please do. Gail Rose Carmack. We say, Zichronam livracha, may the memory of our loved ones who came before us always be a blessing. We'll turn to page 598 as we rise for the Mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, be'alma divra chirute v'yamlich malchute, b'chayechon uvyomechon, uvchaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevarach le'olam u'omei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal, shmei dekedusha b'richu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who creates peace in the heavens on high bring peace to us here on earth, to all people of Israel and all people of the world. And may God bring comfort to all those who are mourning. Together we say, Amen. Please be seated. We have a couple of important announcements. The first is that our religious school registration is officially open for the 2022-2023 school year. And we have two kickoff events. The first is a kickoff fun day, which is the beginning of August 8th. And then the first day of Sunday school itself is September 11th. And last year, I know we had, we had 65 students registered in the religious school, and I know this year we're actually adding back 8th, 9th, and 10th grade. So I'm looking forward to having a full house here on Sunday mornings again. It should be very exciting. So if you have kids and you would like to register them, now is the time. And you can find the link to register on the website or in your email from this week. And also, the Greenville Jewish Film Festival is having their summer festival with the viewing of a film called The Mambo Nicks on August 28th. It's a screening of the film and also just a fun time. We'll join together for the screening, share a Cuban nosh with a mojito, and enjoy the Ileana Rose Cuban Jazz Band, and join us as we all learn the mambo with the Pura Alegria Dance Company. And as a rare treat, schmooze with our special guest, Mambo Judy, who is one of the original Mambo Nicks. The tickets for this event go on sale August 1st. They're going to be $25, and I imagine they're going to go pretty quickly. I believe this is at the One Center, and I think there's something like 275 tickets available. So if you are interested, August 1st is the time to purchase them. That's all I have. If any of our kids want to come up with me to do Kiddush and Motzi? Come on. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen l'chaim. We say this blessing for you and for all of our kiddos who we are thinking of. We say, Yisimcha Elohim, Ke'Ephraim v'chi Menashe, may you be blessed like the sons of Joseph, Ephraim, and Menashe. Yisimcha Elohim, Ke'Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, may you be blessed like the mothers of our people, like Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. We wish for all of our children that they should feel proud of who they are and always strive to be the best version of themselves, as we bless you with these words from the Torah. Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and keep you. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chunecha. May God's light shine on you and be gracious to you. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God's presence always feel close to you, and may you always be blessed with the most important gifts of wholeness and peace. Say together, Amen. And we have a beautiful holiday to behold. Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. We give thanks to God for bread. Our voices rise in song together as our joyful prayer is said. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. There you go. We are going to conclude our service singing Osei Shalom, prayer for peace. And then we'll join together next door. Thank you, Pat, for the oneg this evening. We'll enjoy that soon. All right. La Shabbat Shalom. We'll see you all next door. Thanks for being here. Your singing did not disappoint me. Hold